I'll tell you what, it's not like the olden days. I'm Rosie.
I'm Jake.
And this is our podcast on Round the Twist, which was an Australian children's TV show. And Australia are often very good at making television programmes. As everyone knows, they make Neighbours. And they make Home and Away, but I don't like that. It's Jake, I don't think. And they made Round the Twist, and they made Halfway Across the Galaxy and Turn Left, and they made Kelly for children, and they were all very good. But I think both of us found the most memorable and engaging Round the Twist. And actually, Jake bought all 4 series on DVD quite recently, didn't you?
Yes, the Australians always have an eye on humour, it seems, when they're making TV, or certainly any TV that makes it over here. And it's awfully fun to watch, usually. Round the Twist was funded, at least partly, by the Seven network in Australia, which originally had Neighbours and rejected it after 10 months, and then made up Home and Away because they were jealous of how well Neighbours was doing on the 10 network. So you can see they're all interlinked, these Australian things. Definitely see actors turning up in most Australian things if you watch them, because of course they don't have many people in Australia as we do over here. Lucky them.
And they all get their animals from the same company, Animal Actors.
Oh yes, so they do. So a nice little TV family they have over in Australia. Now, the first series of Round the Twist was from 1989, and I'm sure we didn't see it in 1989, assuming it was actually shown on CBBC in its original run there. I expect it was, but we came across it on weekend mornings in about 1992, when the second series was also airing, or about to air. I suspect we found the first series in a kind of repeat run. Oh, look, here's Round the Twist and there's a new series coming. And the 3-year gap between the first and second series does show, and in many ways, it's a good thing, as we'll come on to in a minute. But the first series first, I suppose.
The premise of Round the Twist, I always noticed and quite liked, can be summed up in one of the lines from the theme tune. Strange things happen. It's about a family of 4, a widow, his twin son and daughter, and his smaller son, who live in a lighthouse in a small town called Port Miranda on the coast of Victoria, is where it's actually filmed. In one of the episodes, don't they suddenly turn around and say they live somewhere else?
Yes, I think they did in one of the very much later ones. So dramatically, I suppose it could be anywhere you want on the coast of Australia, really.
And it's a historic lighthouse, and it's incredibly haunted, we find out across the series. And it's very lovely and very atmospheric and very unique location. Of course, things are either unique or not, aren't they? So a unique location. As I said, strange things happen, and we'll talk about some of the episodes, and you'll see the kind of things we mean if you don't already know, but perhaps you're a huge fan of Round the Twist yourself. The dad's name is Tony, and I can't remember the name of the actor.
Oh yes, Richard Moir. M-O-I-R.
And he's brilliant, isn't he?
Yes.
And he's very sort of dreamy and idealistic and romantic, and he makes his living by making sculptures.
Hilarious performance.
And that's why he's decided that he wants to live in this lighthouse in a nice community with his 3 children. He's after the primary, elementary, whatever they call it, school teacher, Faye, and actually he gets her by the end of the first series, but they decide to get married in all 4 series, don't they?
Yes, all 4 series end with the pair of them deciding to get married, basically, and they never seem to get round to it.
And the strange things happen to one or more of the children. The twins are called Pete and Linda. And what are they, about 14, does Dad say?
He says about 15 in series 2.
15, right.
Which I think is about right, certainly for the actors. And then in series 3, they start going on, oh, these are 13-year-old twins. And we're like, no, they're not.
They even look a bit older than series 2, Pete and Linda, I think.
Yes, they do. You've got to think of Pete and Linda as about 15, because that's what they are.
Yes, I could have believed they were 14, which is why I thought perhaps that's what they'd said. But no, they decided to go for 15. And I think Bronson, and they say he's 7 in Series 1 and 8 in Series 2, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Their only near neighbour is an old woman in a sort of sailing hat called Nell, and she knows all the local history, and she can explain who all the ghosts are and what their unfinished business is, if it happens to be ghosts. If it's not ghosts, does she still tell you what's going on?
Yes, she does. She knows about interesting occulty type things that they come across in some episodes. She knows all the legends and various bits of folklore and magic. She's played by an actress called Bunny Brooke Propernell in the first 2 series. The Twist family, the surname's Twist. People find them weird, people find them strange, and they attract these weird and strange situations. So they are twisted, different from other parts of reality in some way. It's quite clever. And yes, when you first watch an episode, if it's got a ghost in it, you might think, oh, it's a ghost show. But actually, there's a lot of different, interesting,
strange things.
Yeah, mythological, fantasy stuff going on, and things like ESP and precognitive dreaming and anything strange and out of the ordinary is explored in there somewhere. Series 1 is a very good series, but it's not as good as Series 2. The overall quality of the episodes, I think, isn't quite up to Series 2, and we don't think the cast, children, and some of the supporting characters are as good in Series 1 as in Series 2, do we?
That's right, it does have a lot of cast changes, including, between Series 1 and 2, the antagonists. Harold Gribble, who wants to buy the lighthouse and turn it into casinos and things and make money off it and destroy the local history. His wife Matron Gribble, who helps him, and his son James Gribble, who has friction with mostly Pete because he's a boy, and also Linda a bit and Bronson a bit. Pete's a boy his own age, by the way, is what I mean. And his 2 friends Rabbit and Tiger.
I suspect, really, the cast changes in the younger characters are mainly to do with the fact that 3 years have gone by and they can't get away with using the same things, same actors. But you mentioned Harold Gribble there, and we thought he was replaced for Series 2 by a funnier actor, Mark Mitchell, who plays Mr. Gribble after Series 1. Extremely funny comedy performances from him, and he could have stayed the same actor from Series 1, like Dad and Nell and Faye, Miss James, the teacher, who's Dad's woman, but they replaced him because he just wasn't quite hitting the funny notes he should have been in Series 1, was he?
That's right, he's definitely better, and do you think the second Matron Gribble is better?
Well, I think she is funnier, yes, it's true. She has a good comedy rapport going on with the second Mr. Gribble. I think they recast the Gribbles quite judiciously there for Series 2.
We were noticing, weren't we, how Matron Gribble in the second series is less sort of nasty and snide, and she's more being the mayor's wife. Is that what it is, the mayor?
Yes, in the second series.
Yeah, that's right, and she's putting on airs and graces and doing that sort of comedy, which wouldn't have suited the original Matron Gribble, but she was good at being snide and sort of quite unprofessional when they come to the hospital needing a nurse.
So all that sort of thing helps to give each series its own kind of identity and feel, rather like Nightmare. I think we should talk about some of the Series 1 episodes in a moment and say what we do like about them and what's perhaps not as good as Series 2. All the episodes have quite intricate title cards, a little sequence before them where the title of the episode will flash up at some point, with a little scene acted out, or a little sequence of events not necessarily involving the characters that get us into the mood for the episode and produce some of the things in the episode. And one thing that gets worse as the series goes on is the title cards become far too long and intricate and, well, rather boring, really. Lasts for a minute, seeing the whole cast doing stuff, and then the title pops up.
Too elaborate.
Too elaborate, that's the one, isn't it? But in Series 1, they're very well done. I'm thinking of the Santa Claus episode, where you see The title card is just the clawed hands of Santa Claus spelling out the title. Santa Claus with a W. Brilliant. And a longer title card in Series 1 is the one with the remote control that magically affects real life rather than just the video machine. And it's okay that it's longer because it explains to you a little bit about how the remote control became magic, got struck by lightning. Lighthouse gets struck by lightning and it goes into this remote control. And in that longer title card, that's fine because it doesn't take too long. And it gives you a little bit of explanation about what's going on in the episode, because what's happened isn't actually touched on in the episode itself. So they're well judged, those early title cards.
Yes, of course, a lot of people nowadays would want explanations for everything. The sorts of people who want to know why Elsa has magic ice powers. It's not something that would perhaps work quite so well today.
Yes, there's a lot of nice ambiguity about a lot of things around the twist. You know, why is there a dragon living there? Why is there a mermaid that's had it off with this man? You know, it's just the way it is.
Why not?
Because why not? Because strange things do happen. But I was glad that they gave us a little explanation about how the remote control became magic and stuff. You know, just a little bit to tease our imagination. Not too much, not too little. Very well done.
When you got the DVDs, I don't think I'd ever seen the first episode. Had you seen it?
No, I'm sure I hadn't. I think I picked it up with episode 2, which is Bronson and the Dragon, in a repeat run.
And I remember when I watched it being surprised at how much of a coherent ghost story it was. I always remembered it as being more original, more unusual, more wacky, strange things than there's a ghost who's trying to tell you that the valuable painting is hidden in the toilet door or wall or whichever it was.
I think it was the roof, actually.
Oh, well, same principle anyway, and then you find it and save Nell from losing her house, and then the ghost crosses over.
Yes, and I didn't really find that surprising because as a first episode, as a pilot, I was kind of expecting a ghost story, as they are used quite a lot, but not all the time in the whole show, and that's how you'd want to draw your audience in, isn't it, starting with a ghost story. So it's very effective as a first episode. Perhaps an appropriate time to mention there, they do use, as you've mentioned, the toilet door. They do use gross out humour quite a lot in the show. It's one of the show's trademarks. You get a lot of disgusting things happening and disgusting excretions being waded about in and so on. But it's always used very appropriately and in a very fun way as part of the plot, whatever's going on, the themes, whatever's going on. It doesn't seem at all forced. I mean, a lot of shows, like Dick and Dom, can make terrible use of gross-out humour, but I think
Fleabag Monkey Face.
Quite. But I think Round the Twist always was careful with it, if not exactly sparing with it. Agree?
Yes, it's more animal droppings than human droppings, if pardon the expression, and more sort of snot than vomit. It doesn't take it too far.
Yes, anything about human droppings and vomit is more implied, but it is in there. So that's a big aspect of it too. Strange things, gross things, and yeah, just things that in those days you really wouldn't normally have seen on a children's show and were rather original and fun. You see it more nowadays, sadly, and not used so judiciously.
Shall I tell you something else I thought when we watched the DVD?
Yeah.
I thought the first series was going to be a bit better overall than it was.
I did too.
The reasons being that we'd had that Santa Claus episode on video, which is a very good one, although that is one of the ones that used to frighten me. A couple of them did. Another one that used to frighten me is the one where the scarecrow comes to life, which I don't remember if we had it on video, but I always remembered that as being one of the better ones, although I did used to refuse to watch it because it scared the pants off me. As a rule, you used to be more scared of things than I was, didn't you?
But not Round the Twist.
No.
Strange, perhaps. I don't know why that was.
And also, you'd shown me on YouTube shortly before you decided to get the DVD a very funny scene where Pete and Bronson have been digging up this court, which doesn't have its trousers,
Mm.
and it makes Pete say after every sentence, "without my pants." And we watch this scene where he's going home and he's saying to Dad, "I can't go to school tomorrow without my pants."
No, I guess not.
And that kind of thing, which was hilarious. And the rest of the episode probably isn't as good as that scene, but there are other funny bits, like when Pete is listening to, rather than speaking to, his crush, Fiona, and she's asking what he's going to do in the sports day, and he's miming what he's going to do because he doesn't want to speak. And what I think is quite a nice touch is that she doesn't really think anything of it. She's just like playing charades with him and not wondering why he doesn't speak, because strange things happen and sometimes people feel like miming rather than speaking. Then at the end she says, "You want to train with me?" And then he forgets that he's not supposed to speak because he's so keen, and he goes, "Yeah, without my pants." And that's quite funny. She thinks, why would he want to train with me without his pants?
Excellent stuff there. And Dad is particularly good in that episode. I love the way he always takes everything in his stride. Doesn't overreact to when the ghosts and people are saying "without my pants" for no reason, and Santa Claus is suddenly in the house and giving everyone 2 wishes. Brilliant stuff. I do think the Santa Claus episode is still my favourite from that series. I can see why I recorded it. The reindeer nicked off, absolutely brilliant. And also, Without My Pants episode is very strong. And that is one of the ones where the gang helps the ghost to cross over, like in the pilot episode. And I do think those episodes in many ways are the most successful overall ghost crossing over episodes, particularly when we get into series 3 and 4, inferior series, as we'll say in a little bit. The ghost crossing over episodes there, I think, are where it feels most like Round the Twist. Successfully tries to carry on Round the Twist and what makes Round the Twist Round the Twist. And even in the first 2 series, ghost crossing over episodes are always very high quality ones, I think. It's interesting, by the end of series 1, they're quite used to helping ghosts cross over. I think it is the Without My Pants one. They're like, "Oh, there's a ghost, right, let's go and ask Nell who it is, and then help him to cross over." And that's what they do. They're quite used to it by then. They've found the seagull's body for it to help it cross over. They found the old man's false teeth, my darlings. And they know that when they find a ghost, help it cross over, Nell will know what it wants. Sorted.
It is true what I was saying. They're usually more weird and unconventional than that first one, like Pete saying "without my pants" all the time, and when it's a seagull, all the seagulls keep pooing all over the house and stuff. So that's why I was surprised, but I can see why they might not have thought of the really, really strange things yet.
Yes, what else do they have in series 1 that's a bit different? Obviously the Santa Claus stuff, the lipstick that makes anyone female want to kiss Pete or whoever puts it on. It's funny when he's trying to use it on Fiona and he accidentally uses it on Fiona's mum, you know, the sort of thing. Great episode, really.
I always liked the one with the duplicating machine.
Oh yes, that's series 1, Linda and Adnil.
That's because Linda's name is written on her jumper when she duplicates herself, and it's a mirror image. And what they do, which some TV makers might not bother with, is that they put makeup on Linda's mole and then draw it on the other side for the copy.
Yes, nice attention to detail there. You've got one with the magic underpants that make you jump very high and they end up going on the frog. It's just strange and interesting and fun. And yes, it is overall quite high quality series 1.
There are some duds, aren't there, like that one where Linda has a dream about the eucalyptus tree where you blow on the leaf and you transfer your ailment to whoever hears it.
Yes, there are some duds in there. But if one didn't compare it to series 2, it would be excellent TV series rather than just a very good TV series per series. But, there's nothing really wrong with the cast as such, but the series 2 cast is better. The new ones, the children, the new Gribbles, more engaging, more amusing, more fun, more bringing the strange world to life in a way that we enjoyed engaging with when we were young. Particularly Bronson, who is played by Jeffrey Walker in the second series. He was also in Halfway Across the Galaxy and Turn Left. And he made a great deal of fun out of Bronson just running around doing random things in a few episodes, always injecting it with a lot of energy and fun and enthusiasm. And also Pete and Linda were better as well, to get into the characters and the fun and style of the show better than the ones in the first series. Particularly Pete, who's awfully funny in series 2.
He's hilarious.
Always making us laugh with whatever he's given.
I can't remember his name. It's Ben something.
Ben Thomas, I think.
Ah, yes. Yes, he's absolutely brilliant. Going back to Bronson, when it really struck me was when I was comparing Let's Laugh at the Strange Thing Happening to My Brother Pete, laugh at his expense. In Series 1, when Pete's saying, without my pants, Bronson's laughing, going, listen to him. And you think, okay, fine, nothing wrong with that. But then, when in Series 2, all the rubbish is flying at Pete and sticking to him, Jeffrey Walker just does so much more to bring the character to life when he's laughing and he's going and getting the grossest rubbish, the fish skeleton, that kind of thing, out of the bin, and making it stick on Pete. He just brings it all to life more than the other one ever did.
Yes, far more. He does make Bronson mischievous, but very endearing. Realise he's the kind of person who cares about people and sea turtles, and also likes to stick stinky rubbish to Pete when he gets the chance. It's a shame in Series 2, actually, they've made Bronson, the character, all silly about having Faye possibly moving into the lighthouse and marrying Dan. Bronson decided he doesn't like Faye, which I don't really think is a very good aspect to his character. Makes him a bit too bratty, particularly as Jeffrey Walker is doing such good things with him in all the other scenes. So I think that's my one negative aspect of Series 2. Bronson's attitude to Dad and Faye.
As well as the cast being the best, we agree, I think, that it's also got the best stories and the best ongoing plot, or even plots in plural, because there are 2, aren't there?
Oh, yes. What's the ongoing plot in the first series?
The music.
Oh, yes.
All that really happens is that they keep hearing the creepy music coming from the top of the lighthouse, and then they go and say, oh, look, there's nobody here, why can't we find out who's playing the music? And then in the last episode, it turns out it's all of Nell's dead family, and I can't remember what they have to do about it.
They do manage to stop the lighthouse getting knocked down by presenting themselves, the ghost, at the end.
And then do they cross over?
They do, yes, indeed. And it's nice that they remember that Nell's brother Tom is significantly older than his 2 parents and dead sister, because he died when he was quite old man, having kept the lighthouse for a long time, and the parents and sister were killed in a shipwreck when they were reasonably young. Very emotional moments for Nell there, of course, and she won't talk about the music during the series because she knows what it is. Shares the secret with everyone at the end.
It is quite effective. She's pretending she can't hear it, and the audience thinks, oh, she can, really. And then it's a very emotional performance when she's telling them about her family, but not too much so.
Brilliant work from Nell, absolutely excellent, which is carried on into Series 2, of course. When we were watching Series 2, I said I really would give most of these episodes, if I was grading them all out of 5, full 5 marks out of 5. Sometimes I like to grade things out of 5. And I was saying, as Round the Twist episodes, yes, as just TV episodes of anything, 5 out of 5 for most of them. And even the weaker episodes in Series 2 aren't at all bad. The Ice Maiden episode is one of the weaker ones, but it's got a lot of Bronson running about and being fun, so it's worth watching. It's got some precognitive dreaming in it, which is quite interesting and quite subtle.
That's the one I did used to find very confusing as a child. I didn't really understand it with the dreaming and Bronson sort of getting obsessed with the ice sculptures and thinking that his cousin Terry, who's a girl who he doesn't want to see, is melting them by some kind of supernatural powers. I didn't really get it.
It's quite confusing, really. And the other one, which doesn't really have anything supernatural, but it is strange, is where Bronson's chasing around after the sheep that's eaten Nell's jewel.
We say it's a sheep, they say it's a goat.
But they say it's a goat, and he has to look through all its poo and find the opal.
As I said, animal droppings.
So it's weird, and it doesn't have a very interesting supernatural idea, but again, it's Bronson running around being very engaging, so all of Series 2 is well worth watching and enjoying.
Yes, if you watched either of those episodes with Series 1 Bronson, you probably wouldn't think much of them, would you?
You wouldn't, would you? But Jeffrey Walker just brings it all to life so well. And then when you have a really well thought out and engaging Bronson episode, such as the Sea Turtle episode, Up the Pong, it lifts it to whole new levels of brilliance. 5 out of 5 in any category for the Sea Turtle episode. So why don't you now tell us about the 2 ongoing plots in Series 2?
One of them you've just mentioned, as you know, Up the Pong.
Oh yeah.
Which
I forgot that was ongoing.
Which episode actually is that? Because that's where it stops.
Yes, well, it's about 6 episodes into a 13-episode series.
And that's the only one where the other ongoing plot, which I'll talk about shortly, isn't in it, I seem to remember that.
Yes,
right.
I think that's right.
Up to then, they've both been in it a little few seconds where the ghosts have happened, and it's been revealed in some way that Bronson is saving up his pong, not washing his feet, keeping his shoes and socks on. Things happen like he slips off his shoe and makes everyone round the table go, "Oh, what's that smell?" And he makes Fiona's dog faint. And Linda finds him in the bath with shower caps over his shoes and socks and things like that. And Jeffrey Walker makes it all very interesting and very engaging. When that happens with the bath, it's an episode about the mermaid, which I think we'll talk about because that's a very good one.
Yes, possibly the best ever.
Where this character called Andrew has been hiding his hands. Linda's saying, "Why have you got shower caps on your feet?" And Bronson goes, "It's a secret. Andrew's got secret hands, I've got secret feet," which I think is a brilliant line.
So nicely linked in, because you'll later find out what the secret is. Both of the secret.
That's right, and the secret is that Gribbs, Tiger and Rabbit are, to Bronson's knowledge, going to go and nest Rob when the sea turtle, Old Faithful, is that what they call her?
Yeah.
She comes and lays her eggs like she does every year, and they're going to nest Rob and sell the eggs. I think that's what you do when you rob a turtle nest, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what he's going to do is take his feet to the beach and knock them out before they can see where she lays her eggs. And then things happen like they're having Faye's birthday party. It's a birthday.
Yes, it's her birthday.
On the same day, and he wants to leave, so Dad thinks he hasn't come round to Faye as much as he has. And then he tells Pete and Linda, and they say, "Well, we'll help you then, but you have to come back to the party." I can't actually remember, but he accidentally washes his feet at some point. He gets them in the rock pool or something, so then he doesn't know what to do. And where are Pete and Linda? Have they left?
He's knocked them out with a trainer because they were going to go and tell on him.
That's right.
He's used one trainer to rescue them from school by knocking out their teacher, Mr. Snapper, who's the same actor in the first 3 series, and the rest of the class. Then he uses the other trainer to knock out Pete and Linda at the beach. So when he's accidentally washed his feet, he thinks he's run out of pop.
Yes. I couldn't remember up to that point. You remember it much better than I do, but I do remember that after he tries to defeat the bullies with no weapon, he remembers that he's got his socks in his pocket, so he uses them to knock out the bullies. And then everyone comes to find him at the end, and they all watch Old Faithful laying her eggs, and it's a very nice moment. And then the end of the episode is that Bronson's going to give Faye her birthday present, and he gets his other smelly sock out of his pocket, and everybody faints.
Brilliant. And Bronson does a very good job when he thinks he hasn't got any weapons to defeat the bullies, of giving them the runaround and distracting them, and you really get behind him in that episode. I think if I make a top 10 list of individual TV performances. Jeffrey Walker as Bronson will certainly be on there somewhere. So that's definitely one of the 5-star episodes of the series too. You were mentioning the ongoing ghost storyline there as well.
There are these two ghosts who keep appearing in the lighthouse, and their names are Matthew and Jeremiah. And at first, they just sort of comment on what's going on.
Yeah.
Say, oh, Pete's this and Linda's that. And then gradually they start to reveal more about themselves. And Matthew is the one with the hat, isn't he?
Yes.
And he starts to reveal that he's made some kind of mistake, done a terrible thing, and then that he's been in love. And at one point, I think he gets out this picture of his girlfriend, and he's saying, oh, it's all my fault, Jeremiah, and things like that, because they're Scottish. And you start to think, whatever is going on with these ghosts, which you don't with the music, because it's the same thing every time they play the music. You don't learn anything.
It's not an unfolding story, the music. It's true.
And then the last episode of Series 2 is revealing what Matthew and Jeremiah have been up to and how Matthew is going to try to cross over. And what actually happened was that he was the lighthouse keeper, and I like how they use the lighthouse in the story. Nell's family happened to live there, but they weren't really using it as a lighthouse, or if they were, it didn't come into the ghost story.
Yes, I guess Tom became lighthouse keeper after Matthew had killed himself.
Yes, which Matthew has done because he fell asleep at his post, and the ship with his fiancée and all her family on it got destroyed and everyone was killed. But then Jeremiah confesses to Bronson.
Yes, he does. Again, this is Bronson being awfully good.
Yeah, and he's possessing Gribbs, James Gribble at the time. He confesses to Bronson that he drugged Matthew because he was jealous. He wanted the fiancée, and he was going to guide the ship in himself, and everyone was going to say, you're a hero, Jeremiah, and Matthew was a rubbish lighthouse keeper. But then he couldn't operate the light, so in effect he killed everybody, and then Matthew thought he'd killed everybody, so he threw himself off the lighthouse.
And Jeremiah lived for many, many, many more years and is known to be older than Matthew the ghost, which is another nice touch.
Yes, they are brothers, by the way, which I don't think I mentioned. When we are learning about them, Jeremiah is quite often saying to Matthew, oh, you're rubbish, aren't you, Matthew, and you shouldn't have fallen asleep and that kind of thing. So it's quite a good twist when it turns out that he's responsible.
Yes, another connotation to the title there.
Oh, yes, and in the meantime, Matthew has possessed Pete, and he's setting up the light and everything so that they can guide in the ghost of the ship on the anniversary of when it happened in the same conditions, sort of thing, and all the ghosts can cross over.
Including the rat.
Yes, that's nice. The rat.
So they will go to heaven or wherever at the end. Very nice to see.
And it's very, very nice because everyone's in the lighthouse, and then they all come together and work together, and Harold Gribble is there, and he gets really into it. Oh, we have to save everyone. And he's not even possessed, like many of the characters are by this stage. And I'm particularly impressed with James Gribble in this episode, because hitherto all he's really done is bully and be an antagonist. And then he has to do this emotional stuff as Jeremiah, in a Scottish accent, and I think he does it very well. And I'm reminded of people who couldn't be bothered to read Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince suddenly realising when the film came out that Draco Malfoy was a lot more interesting than he seemed. And some people, which they couldn't be expected to do from the book alone, to be fair, were praising Tom Felton's performance and saying, oh, all he's done is bully and be an antagonist, and now he's already come into his own doing all this more difficult emotional stuff. And I think the same sort of thing about James Gribble.
It's great how Bronson is the one who saves everyone in a way with the kite at the end as well. Nice culmination of the series for him. So yeah, great build up to that and great payoff, definitely at its absolute peak there in series 2.
Shall we talk about some of our favourite episodes
Yes,
now?
before we move on, we'll say the other 5-star episodes that we like in that series.
We already mentioned the mermaid a couple of times.
In the closing credits, they'll often put in interesting deleted scenes and different shots that they tried out for different bits. And you can see from the deleted bits, additional bits, at the end of the mermaid one, which is called Nails, there was a huge amount of content that there wasn't time to get into the episode. And I was saying, wow, they should have made this into a 60-minute with adverts Christmas special sort of thing. There's so much in there because there's a lot of substance to it, a lot of plot, a lot of themes, a lot of characterization, a lot of things to get through. And it really is the bare bones in the final episode. It's nice to be able to piece it together with all the bits you can see during the closing credits.
For instance, Bronson meeting Andrew and asking why he's got the gloves on. That's how he knows he has secret hands.
Yes, it's not done justice in its time slot, that episode.
It's a Linda ep, and in Series 2 particularly, they tend to be quite sort of serious and emotional, don't they?
Yeah.
That's very much a strength of hers, I think, rather than being a comedy actress, although she can be funny with everybody else when the occasion calls for it. And I do remember finding that one very different as a child, finding the atmosphere much more serious and emotional, and finding the story much more epic. I found it very, very, very engaging as well. What happens is that Linda's in love, or whatever you are at about 15, with this guy called Andrew, and they keep going over to this island where he and his father live on a boat, and it's all sort of windswept, and it's kind of like Wuthering Heights, but by the sea or something.
They have this very haunting special soundtrack for the episode, score for the episode, with this kind of female voice that sounds kind of like Mermaid song. You don't realise it though when you don't know the secret. Very well done.
Of course, there is that comedy sequence at the beginning, isn't there? Or near the beginning, where everybody's auditioning to play.
Yeah, it's very memorable, that.
And of course, Pete's talking about how they're going to have to do this audition in pairs and kiss each other, and he's thinking about Andrew doing it, and he says, I wonder if the new kid can kiss. I mean act, which makes us laugh.
And that's when you notice that the new Fiona in Series 2 actually dwarfs Pete. She's quite Amazonian, or Aboriginal, dwarfs him in all directions. Perhaps that's why they didn't always put them together on camera so much. They look a bit mismatched as a couple.
Yeah, indigenous, I think we're meant to say now, aren't we? That's what Brad was saying on Neighbours, indigenous kids. But yes, Pete seems a lot less keen on Fiona in Series 2. Perhaps that's why. Perhaps they don't look as good together, have as much chemistry, or be the right sort of size as much as original Pete and Fiona. Although they do get a snog at the end.
They do, and he's got Pete for Fiona written on his bag, so it's still in there.
And when the rubbish is sticking to him, he's worried about smelling, and he says, what if Fiona gets a whiff? But that's all of it, really. Oh, but he wants her in the vampire play, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So, there's bits and bobs in that. And then, of course, Andrew is growing all these nails, which turn out to be scales, and I think I can remember not knowing the solution. If I was a bit older, perhaps I would have worked it out, but I do remember feeling quite worried about him with Linda. He's covering up his hands, he's got nails all over himself. She's saying to his father, he needs to see a doctor, and the father's saying a doctor can help him, and you're thinking, oh my God, what's wrong?
Has he got a mad father? No, he hasn't, actually. His father's quite right, as it turns out.
And then it's too stormy for her to go and see Andrew for a bit, and there's all this montage of rain and wind, pathetic fallacy reflecting her emotions, and then the next time she gets to see him he's in his wheelchair, and you think, oh my God. But then he says, it's okay, I understand what's happening. And then his father's falling in the stormy sea and he's going to drown, and Andrew leaps out of his wheelchair, and you think, whoa, is he nuts? But actually he can go and save his father's life because he's a merman.
Absolutely brilliant. I didn't really know what was going on in that one, and it is a great reveal. He has to go off with his mother at the end, of course, as he has become a merman. You don't have a choice, Andrew, but it's all right, and you've got all the music and so on going on atmospherically. It's absolutely brilliantly done. I really think his father should have told him the whole truth as soon as he grew 3 nails in each finger, really, rather than waiting until he needed a wheelchair. But there we go.
Maybe he thought he wouldn't believe him.
Then, yes, once he starts to grow a tail, you think, right, he'll believe me if I tell him now.
He's showing Linda his hands, isn't he? And he's saying, you should see my feet. Bit of a clue there.
So, in many ways, I think that is the best episode. It's perhaps the most original in some ways, the most atmospheric, the most effectively done. Doesn't have a lot of Bronson in it, but what it does have is very good.
I wouldn't say it was the most fun.
No, not the most fun. It depends what you want from an episode, really.
Exactly.
But definitely one of the top ones. It's round the twist, showing what it can do at its best.
And another one in that vein is, what's it called? Granddad's Gift.
Oh, yes, which is also Linda very well doing the quite serious emotional acting.
We haven't talked much about the individual characters except for Bronson. The main thing with Linda, I think, is that she's quite political and she's very interested in everybody's rights, including animals' rights, and very compassionate. So what happens in Granddad's Gifts is that she finds, first of all, she's sleepwalking when she finds it, this stole made out of a fox which Nell's grandfather has shot and given to his wife. I guess he had it treated and sewn up and stuff first. And the fox's innards are buried under this lemon tree. So what Linda has to do is go and get all the lemons from the lemon tree and feed them to the fox. And some people nowadays might want to know, well, why is this happening now?
It just is.
Some people want to know, why is it happening at all? It just is. She can feed them to this fox stole, which has these glass eyes, which are really creepy, and then all his innards grow back. And when the fox isn't a real fox yet, it's this stole prop, and it gets fattened up and stuff, it's incredibly creepy and weird, and it's moving and whining, and I found it absolutely terrifying.
Perhaps that one is the most haunting episode of All Round the Twist.
And it's in this cupboard, which is very dark and atmospheric.
It's a secret cupboard in Linda's room that she's never found before. She's kind of guided to it by this whining dead fox inside it. Very affecting.
Yes, and then the really emotional climax, which still brings a tear to my eye, not lying, is Linda going to get the last 2 lemons for the fox's eyes, and Gribbs and Tiger and Rabbit have been cutting down people's gardens with a chainsaw throughout the episode, so it may not come as a surprise to find that they've cut down the lemon tree. And Linda is understandably devastated that she can't give the fox his real eyes. He's got these glass yellow eyes that are just there. And she's crying and sobbing. Then along comes Nell and says, try the other lemon tree. And Linda says, that won't work. It's not the fox's lemon tree. His innards aren't under it. She doesn't put it quite like that. And then Nell says, try it anyway, love. So Linda takes the fox's other lemons. She's still crying and she's saying, they're not from your grave. And they keep us guessing about whether anything's going to happen. And then, thankfully, the fox comes out of the lighthouse and it's real and it's not scary anymore. And it's got Granddad's eyes because he's buried under the other lemon tree. And there's this sort of thematic thing where it didn't do very well. It never did do very well, that lemon tree, because, this is how I interpret it anyway, Grandad wasn't really very nice. So the lemon tree didn't want to grow from his remains.
But it did grow the 2 lemons, which were his 2 eyes, which were given to the fox in the end, which is kind of poetic justice. And it's a very good moment. Linda, look, says Nell, and there's the fox with his blue eyes, rushing off with a whole new lease of life. That's one episode, I've just been reminded, which is kind of like a ghost crossover episode, but it's not quite, because it's a dead thing or person gets a new lease of life, gets to come back to life and have a whole new life. And the other one like that is the Scarecrow one, series 1. So it's similar to a ghost crossing over episode, but not quite the same, and works very well too. Yes, I think I might put that one as my most haunting and affecting Round the Twist. Merman one is the most emotional and atmospheric and well done Round the Twist. It's awesome series too. Another 5-star one in that series for me is the Copycat Hat, which is absolutely hilarious, the things you can do by getting the Mongolian cat hat to see something and then you kind of muscle memory copy it and you'll end up doing things like eating horse poo. Dad eats the dog food. Faye thinks that's absolutely hilarious, and it's just a great fun episode all round and features a lot of Bronson doing amusing things.
Yes, you can tell that Dad and Faye are meant to be together because she finds that kind of thing funny. Oh, Tony! Whereas some people would think it was a bit off-putting.
I think that may have been the first one I ever saw in a weekend morning, which just goes to prove that the first series ones we saw were repeats. But it's a great one to start with, and it has ingrained in my mind Fiona has a dog. Although actually she only has a dog in that one episode in the first two series, but there we go. Also, 5 stars, lots of Bronson mucking about, doing great stuff, is the Yuckles episode in that series, which are kind of fungi that copy people and things and then explode with laughter and with yellow goo. Absolutely fantastic episode, that.
It's got a very funny line in it, hasn't it? Jam tarts!
Yes.
We went around quoting from one after we'd seen it.
It's very funny as well, because everyone's bringing their essential trappings for adventure, as Pickle might say. Pete and Linda have their compass, their map. Gribbs and Tiger and Rabbit have their sledgehammer and their pickaxe and whatever to destroy the Yuckles. That's their essential trapping. And Bronson's essential trappings is food, basically. Jam, tarts, and a couple of other things. Nicely showing up all the different characters and their different motivations there. The one other episode which we didn't mention from Series 2, which I think is probably the weakest in the series, because it doesn't have Bronson running around a lot, is the one with the de-aging machine. It's called Pink Bow Tie, and it's about Pete and Gribbs and Tiger and Rabbit telling the story of how they found this anti-aging machine that's turned this teacher into a baby. They're all on a ship, and it's not the best one, but because it's got the Series 2 cast, it's still a perfectly passable episode. Gribble's grandparents, not sure if they're Mr. Gribble or Matron Gribble's parents, actually.
It's not clear, is it?
Not at all clear. They get a whole new lease of life in that one, having de-aged themselves and ended up with a load of money, gone off to live another 60 years or something, having practically reached the end of their lives. They weren't actually dead, but they were awfully old and infirm. So that's kind of a new lease of life episode as well. That's probably the most fun bit of that episode.
I also like in that episode one of the robbers who have stolen this money, finding Pete and accusing him of being his partner in crime, having de-aged himself, and Pete just being completely puzzled and not having any idea what's going on, because, as we were saying, Ben Thomas is very funny.
Yeah, so even the weaker ones in that series do have the cast, particularly Pete, Bronson, obviously Dad and Nell, being absolutely brilliant and hilarious. Linda at her best, as we were saying, being quite emotional and affecting in that way. So it's an absolutely brilliant series. Round the Twist Series 2 I would hold up as a beacon of children's television. Now, it seemed for quite some years that they had left Round the Twist at the end of Series 2, which indeed they undoubtedly should have done. But they did come back 7 years later and 8 years later to make 2 more series. Now, the character of Mr. Snapper, who I mentioned briefly, was played by this actor/writer/director called Esben Storm. I'm not sure if that's his real name. And Esben Storm had done the adapting of the stories, most of them, the overall storylines. He did the adapting and did a lot of the script work and the directing as well on the first 2 series, as well as playing Mr. Snapper. So he returned, under duress perhaps, I'm not sure, to do the overall storylines for series 3 and 4. And he wrote and directed a lot of the episodes in Series 3, which was on in 1999. So yes, 7 years later. Now, he's a returning actor after all that time for Series 3 as Mr. Snapper. And Mark Mitchell as Mr. Gribble from Series 2 was also a returning actor after all that 7 years. But everyone else was different, which is perhaps not surprising after all that time. Obviously, you can't have the same kids if you want them to still be kids. But it's very unfortunate that there was really no chance of Dad and Nell coming back again, because, they've grown up, they could have done it, Dad could have dyed his hair. Now, Nell was dead or dying. I think Bunny Brooke actually died in 2000 and was on her last legs when they came back and made Series 3. But
not very nearly dead, and very actually dead.
Exactly, but she was over 80 by that point. She'd been in her 70s, being Nell, an old woman. She was reaching the end of her life and couldn't be in this new series. I mean, that's unavoidable, isn't it? Unfortunate, but that is just part of life. And the new Nell is pretty awful and pointless. It isn't used very well, how she should be.
She just can't, nobody can, recapture the original Nell.
Yes, that's true. And she doesn't get the chance, because she doesn't get to talk about the ghosts and legends and characters and creatures as much as she used to. So there's not much recapturing of Nell in any way, which is very unfortunate. But what is a great shame is that Dad, Richard Moir, had retired from acting by then. The reason being that just before he made Series 2 of Round the Twist, I read he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and he was off having a lot of treatment for it. And apparently there's a documentary that he made for Australian television sometime in the late 90s about some pioneering new treatment for Parkinson's disease that he was having. And according to the Wikipedia, Richard Moir is still alive today in 2016. So even if that experimental treatment didn't help, it certainly didn't do him any harm. But sadly, even though he was alive and fighting his Parkinson's disease and probably doing quite well in some aspects of his life, he wasn't acting anymore. So Dad is really no longer Dad.
He's okay, the new Dad, isn't he? He's just not really quite right if you're comparing him to the original.
And that is a problem, really, with most of the Series 3 and 4 cast. They're okay, almost as okay as the Series 1 cast, I suppose, in some ways, in some episodes. But following on the heels of Series 2, it's really no follow-up. Now, Series 3, though, let's say this now, I will say this now, is a lot better than Series 4, even though it's not as good as Series 2. The reason being, I'm sure, that for some reason, God knows why, Wikipedia won't tell me, no one's said it on the movie database, so that's all my research exhausted. But for some reason, Esmond Storm, Mr. Snapper, did not return for Series 4. It's strange, isn't it? Having returned after a 7-year hiatus for Series 3, there he is, and then he's not in Series 4 the very next year. I wonder why that was.
It is very strange. He's credited with doing a sort of series outline, isn't he?
I think, really, what he did was get commissioned to do the series outline for Series 3 and 4 all at once, and then come and work on them. But for some reason, he never actually came back to work on Series 4, so he's still credited for making the overall series storylines and themes, because yes, he did that along with Series 3. But for some reason, he hasn't come back in the summer of 2000 to make the show with the rest of the new cast. We thought he was planning to at one point, at the end of Series 3. They're all there at the end in their cast photograph, as it were, moving photograph, waving at us and saying, "See you soon." And we think, it looks like Esmond Storm is planning to come back at that point. Was he ill? Did he have some other sort of emergency that prevented him from coming back for Series 4? Very, very strange, and very, very detrimental for the show, because without Esmond Storm actually writing the scripts for most of the episodes, and directing a lot of the episodes, Series 4 really doesn't feel very round twisty anymore. In Series 3, when you've got an Esmond Storm written episode and/or an Esmond Storm directed episode, you've got the characters helping a ghost to cross over or something similarly appropriate to the Round the Twist we know and love. We sit there and we watch Series 3 and we say, oh yeah, well that's alright, it'd be better with the proper cast, but it feels like Round the Twist. I think it's worth doing. a few episodes like that in Series 3. And inevitably, if they are ones where we're going to say that, Espen Storm is directly involved. He's been there writing it, he's been there directing it, he's been there acting it. The one I think of there is one where Pete helps this surfer ghost to cross over.
There's this bit where he's having a heart-to-heart with Dad. I can't remember what they're actually saying, but Dad's telling him something about how you have to do the right thing. And we watch it and think, oh, wouldn't that be good with Richard Moore and Ben Thomas?
It would have been excellent, wouldn't it?
It's okay with those two. It's just that you can't help wishing it was the ones you love.
That's right, and if the one with the surfer ghost was with Ben Thomas as Pete, it would have been even more good, but it's still a decent episode to watch, and you think, oh, Ghost's a bit selfish. Doesn't care if Pete's ruining his life to help the ghost cross over, and then the ghost comes to Pete and pretends that everything's going to be alright, so Pete can go and take this test that he's supposed to take, and think, oh, the ghost's alright, really. He deserves to be saved in the end, which he is. And that feels like Round the Twist. It is Round the Twist. It would have been better with the proper Round the Twist cast, but, it was worth coming back and doing episodes like that. And of course, the very best one is where Pete and Mr. Gribble swap bodies, because it's got Mark Mitchell as Mr. Gribble, or indeed as Pete in Mr. Gribble's body, being absolutely hilarious. So that one's worth watching.
This, I think, brings us quite nicely onto the point about Pete as an actor.
Ah, yes, do tell us that.
When he's being Pete, he's not really very good, in my opinion. He says all his lines very sort of whiny, I find.
Whiny.
Especially when they're trying to get him to be funny and be ill at ease with the situation. He'll just whine about it. And you really feel like he's acting, which is often the case with kids, but more with him than previous Round the Twist cast members, I think. And even his contemporaries. But the very weird and interesting thing is that he can act better when he's playing somebody else in Pete's body or whatever it is.
Pete with no brain, although that wasn't as good as we thought, was it?
It wasn't as good as I remembered.
No.
But yes, Mr. Gribble in Pete's body is one such thing. And a very funny bit is where he's had detention. Mr. Snapper says, "What have you learned?" And he says, "Never insult an authority figure with an overinflated sense of his own importance." Something like that. Mr. Snapper goes, "Yes," and lets him go, and then realises what he said. And that's funny, because that is what you learn from detention, isn't it?
It is, yes. Again, that's Esben Storm in person this time, making a great contribution. Getting the best, perhaps, out of some of the new actors.
That's right. So that's good. Another time is when there's this ghost of a sort of Shakespearean actor.
This is Series 4.
Who has, yes. So not a very good episode overall, but this troupe of actors made themselves look like the Twists, and this ghost who's made himself look like Pete, the older son, is tricking Gribbs and Rabbit and Tiger into running into a wall, and he's doing a sort of pretentious Shakespearean acting and telling them to run like a billy goat.
That was good.
And that was good. And the other one that I can remember, which may be Series 4 as well, is where he's been sort of replaced by this sports person.
Oh, who's come out of the telly.
He's come out of the telly and he does lots of endorsements, and he's sitting there talking about why he drinks his orange juice or something, and he's being all sort of smarmy and smiling for the camera comically, and he does that very well.
I think that actor would be better as a kind of one-man funny character show than playing Pete on Round the Twist.
Maybe he needs more of a definite character, or a caricature even, than Pete.
It was interesting when you were saying at first that Gribbs in that series was too generic. He's no longer ginger, and he's just a bit sort of nasty and generic. It's a very good way of describing him.
Yes, he looks a lot like a bully. He's able to act a lot like a bully, and, he's fine. He's not bad at all.
And you said later he's pretty good, and I said, yes, he's pretty good, but as you said, he's not really Gribbs enough.
Not unique.
So it just kind of falls a bit short, a lot of that casting.
I'll tell you a problem I have with Bronson. He's not Geoffrey Walker. Nobody is. He can't help that. The problem is that they unsuccessfully try to create Geoffrey Walker's Bronson, and they go much too far with it. They make him too gross. and silly. One thing that Geoffrey Walker would sometimes do, because the script told him to, was mix up long words and not know what they meant and say the wrong thing. Like when Dad's just been dumped by Faye and feeling disillusioned, he said all women are interchangeable. Bronson's going around saying women are intercontinental. But he doesn't do it all the time. But this third Bronson says the wrong words in practically every sentence, which is obviously meant to be funny, but it just doesn't ring true. And even if it did, it wouldn't be funny.
Yes, it's a poor facsimile of Round the Twist at times. You can see where they've got the ideas from, but it's not really working. But as I say, the presence of Esmond Storm in the writing studio, behind the camera and in front of the camera, does help to temper that in Series 3. But then, for some reason, he's not there for Series 4. Very, very strange and very, very detrimental, because the first thing you notice is that Pete has become a caricature of a would-be Casanova and starts dumping Fiona, even though they've never really been properly together. It's even more of a kind of a Round the Twist, skim off the top of the characters and the situations, and is very disappointing to watch, even after Series 3. Series 4 is a letdown.
I'd say that with Linda they make the same mistake. They take the most basic aspect of her character and exaggerate it and eradicate anything else, so she's going around bossing everybody into doing these political campaigns that pretty much are meaningless, and she's being political for the sake of it, not because she believes in what she's doing.
Yes, I seem to think, like bad fan fiction is an expression we've sometimes used for these things. And it's true, it's like taking the basic ingredients but not putting them together right at all. And I'm sure if Esmond Storm had actually been there, as was clearly planned he was going to be, and done the scripts and done the directing for Series 4, it wouldn't have been that much worse, and it would have been about the same quality as Series 3. Mark Mitchell as Mr. Gribble does stick around in Series 4 and manages to make us laugh a couple of times. Oh no, I've sneezed my brains out.
Oh, that's a really awful episode overall, isn't it?
Terrible episode, but it was a bit of a light in the darkness there.
It doesn't make sense. And as we were saying, Round the Twist doesn't make sense for people who want everything to make perfect sense and have an explanation. But this episode, even in the rules around the twist, it didn't make sense.
The 2 times we've sat and watched the DVDs, we've had to have a break between Series 3 and 4, and it's a good thing we have, because Series 3, as we say, is very disappointing after Series 2. And then Series 4, God, it's depressing how much it misses the mark. Esmond Storm, according to Wikipedia, is actually dead now, so probably nobody will ever find out why he wasn't there and why the show had to go so far off the rails. But it is a shame, not globally speaking, but it is in terms of, they could have got more decent extra Round the Twist than they did. And given that they bothered going back and making those final 2 series, it's a shame they didn't get the potential out of them as much as possible.
In Series 4, Fiona has a different dog, doesn't she?
Yes.
An Alsatian.
Miss Offenbar.
Should we just quickly say what the ongoing plots are?
Yes, we should. But speaking of Miss Offenbach, it's funny when Pete's become a werewolf and fallen in love with Miss Offenbach, Fiona's dog. But again, we were saying, Ben Thomas doing that would be even more hilarious. But yes, the ongoing plot.
Well, in Series 3, what's happened is that these Vikings have turned up for some reason, and the Viking lad has left in Linda's possession the Viking Book of Love. Sounds really weird when I try to explain it, doesn't it? And what happens is that in every episode, or nearly every episode, or there's always at least some reference to it, somebody reads a poem from the book to someone else and makes them fall in love with the reader. And it's a bit annoying, really, if you want everything to sort of tie up and make sense as much as it ought to, because they only read about 2 lines of the poem, and you see it all disappearing, the words disappearing as they read them. They're like, oh, it's disappearing. And then the person's like, oh, I'm in love with you now. And they don't finish reading the poem. But then it's still not any of it there when they pick the book up again. So that's annoying. but I suppose it doesn't really matter. And then the end of the series, the Vikings come, and why are they there anyway?
Well, they've been stuck in a kind of time mist, and they haven't been able to cross over. So they're kind of a time anomaly, a ghost in that way, I suppose.
And then they come and get their book back, and the lad and the Viking girl end up together. I don't even know. I didn't understand it.
The earlier one with the Vikings, where they almost kidnap, make Gribble and stuff, is one of the very worst episodes. I don't know, be put down in the doldrums with most, all of the Series 4 episodes on my list, I think.
But then I do think that ongoing plot is pulled off better than Michaela Bannis, who was replacement Libby in Neighbours for a while, keeps popping out of a magic door, which she does throughout Series 4, and I think she's quite good, and I liked her as Libby, and I can see that she could potentially have been good in Round the Twist as well.
But we were supposed to think she was a boy, but we never did, even though we knew it was Michaela Bannis.
Yeah, she's got this sort of knight's costume on, but it doesn't explain why. And then in the last episode, she takes that off, but she's not naked. She's got a sort of pretty dress on and pretty hair. And it turns out she wants Pete to come and live on Avalon with her, where there are no men, and impregnate her. And they will have to decide whether Pete and all his friends and family are going to go and live on Avalon and never be able to leave. And it's stupid.
It really is. It just doesn't work on any level. But yeah, it's definitely an inglorious end for Round the Twist there. And yeah, it could have been worth coming back and making those two series, or at least bits of them. But, yeah, it didn't reach its potential with the ongoing plots or individual episodes. Shame. I think it's worth saying that we didn't watch those when they were first on, and they were on CBBC. I remember finding the very first episode of Series 3 on CBBC just randomly one day after school, after sixth form, and thinking, what the hell is this? Is this supposed to be Round the Twist? Oh, Mr. Snapper's the right person, but it hasn't got the right Dad and Nell. That's not worth watching. So I kind of put it out of my mind and didn't come back to it.
By the way, New Nell does occasionally get to talk about the history and stuff, doesn't she?
Yeah, the whirling dervish, I think, is the best bit.
And in the Surfer Ghost one, she tells the story of what happened to him, which again helps you to see how it could be a really good, proper episode.
Yeah, Esmond Storm still knows how to write Nell and direct Nell, even though unfortunately you can't have proper Nell actually come and do it. So yeah, it's signs, protrusions of proper good Round the Twist in there, which sadly don't have the cohesion that they could and perhaps should.
But of course, the fact that that happened doesn't eradicate the brilliant things that they did do with Series 2 in particular.
Not at all. And when I decided to buy the DVDs, having watched a few bits on YouTube, as Rosie was mentioning, and saying, oh, yeah, without my pants, that's funny, and we know Santa Claus is funny, and we know Series 2 is brilliant, and it would be very interesting to see what this series that I came across and thought, is actually like. So that's why I did buy the 4 DVD box set. As I mentioned earlier, we've sat and watched it through twice in the past 6 years, and we additionally sat and watched Series 2 on another occasion, just Series 2, because we like it. And I think that's what we'll do when we watch it again, won't it? Be watch and enjoy Series 2. So there we are. The show with an interesting history and a strange and not always achieving its potential production schedule. And there is an end to our Round the Twist podcast. Do join us again next time for a podcast on the subject of weekend mornings. In fact, Round the Twist used to be on weekend mornings, as did Incredible Games and a lot of other shows we've talked about, but specifically in our Weekend Mornings podcast, where we'll be talking about weekend mornings magazine shows sort of thing. It started with Swap Shop, as the BBC documentary said. Well, not for us it didn't, it started with Going Live, but you see, it will be that kind of thing. Weekend morning magazine phone in and abuse Peter Andre show. So that will be very fascinating. Until then,
Good night out there.
whatever you are.